And then I'll have times where, like, if I just, like, grind for, like, 3 months and I'm, like, doing a bunch of content with my students a lot, I'm just on top of it for, like, 3 months, take, like, a week or so and just, like, go on vacation or, like, I'll chill, I'll hang out.
Yeah.
And I guess just having, a way to keep your consistency where, because obviously no one can just be on, unless you're like Elon Musk, where you can work, sleep for 3 hours under your desk, wake up and go back to work. Most people aren't a
Yeah.
machine. So
Well, everyone knows he's an alien.
if 4 hours a day is too much, you notice like you work 4 hours a day and the next day you just cannot get yourself to do it, then like
You know yourself. Yeah.
find like the hours that like you can consistently put in every day and do. I mean, just
Where you
start,
can like replicate the process.
yeah, start with 1 hour. Like if you're writing a book, if you're editing content, if you're getting into Amazon, if you're getting into Airbnb, like just put in what you can. I don't know. You'll never see me like drinking a Red Bull or anything. It's just today, I swear.
Yeah. I believe you.
But normally, like I avoid like eating unhealthy, and it's a huge change. Like when you eat super clean, I just feel like, I don't know how to explain it, but well lubricated. Like I feel like I'm just going.
Episode 70, Stay Classy podcast. Super excited to have Steven Billman on the show. Steven is the CEO of BNB Syndicate, which teaches people how to bring in income with Airbnb. Before we get into some of your more background details, I wanted to ask you about the story you were telling me earlier on the phone today, which was about how you essentially were living out of your truck at one point entirely, like you had nowhere else to go. But then that's sort of, I believe, where you came up with the concept for what you wanted to do for a living. And that's in turn led to the BNB Syndicate. So can you tell us a little bit about like the living in the truck period? Like what was that transition period like for you?
Yeah, so when I had first gotten into San Diego, thanks to the Navy, I was on my first ship, which people that are in the Navy know ships are cold, they smell, the beds are really small. And then with that being said, I slept in the backseat of my truck because, as you know, San Diego doesn't really get too hot or too cold, luckily. My backseat was bigger than my bed on the ship. And I had phone service, so I could text my family and stuff because I didn't have any connections in San Diego, didn't know anybody. So while sleeping in the backseat of my truck and going to work every day, I quickly found out that I didn't like the Navy. And I needed to make more money, obviously, because I didn't want to sleep on the ship or sleep in the backseat of my truck.
Yeah. Did you ever have like, not to get overly personal, did you ever have like maybe a date night out and, you know, one thing leads to another and it's like, you see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Like, did that get tricky with like having a truck and all or never an issue?
No, I wasn't even worried about any of that like at the time.
Not really a dating time
No.
for you in life.
No.
But yeah, so then once, so you were still in the Navy during this whole time.
That's when I first got into the Navy.
That was when you first got in the Navy. You're sleeping in your truck. And they were okay with you, by the way, just like taking off and being in your truck? Or
no, you're not supposed to. But...
Oh, so you were, sorry, I know nothing about like the terminology. Were you technically like AWOL then? Or like what was, like when you were just like gone for periods of time? Like
no, so it would just be like...
Or they just never noticed?
No, it was just after work. Like
okay.
When I would like leave work, like my place where I would live was supposed to be like on the ship.
But they didn't notice you were gone, like living on your truck? Like no one picked up on that?
No, not really. There's not too many people that live on the ship. It's only people that are like, that just get there, like when you're new, before you have like any qualifications or anything.
Okay.
Because like for you to get like a barracks room, you have to like get all these qualifications, but like usually it takes like a few months.
Okay.
And I'd rather sleep in the backseat.
Was there like a moment, sorry, but was there like a moment when you were, you know, you're living in your truck, you're in the Navy, you know, life kind of sucks, but like, was there a moment where you're like, man, like I want to do Airbnb, I want to do Airbnbs. Like I want that to be like where my future lies. I want to have that be my source of income. I don't want to do the Navy anymore. Was there like a single moment where that kind of snapped for you? Or maybe it's something that you read or somebody that inspired you that sort of it was a gradual transition? Yeah,
so when I was sleeping in the backseat of my truck, I was trying every side hustle that I could find. Drop shipping, a bunch of different e-com stuff, Amazon FBA. I even did window tinting on cars and stuff like that. And I knew I wanted to get in real estate just because like like what you hear all the time, like 90% of millionaires are created through real estate. And I knew that. But I was only 19. I didn't know anything about business funding, credit, anything like that. So I kind of just dismissed it. Like I couldn't get into real estate.
It was like, no way.
Yeah. And I don't even remember exactly where I had found it, but one day I came across something called rental arbitrage, which is what I do now. But it's essentially where you can rent a property from a landlord, and then of course with their permission, take that same property, get photos taken after you furnish it, and then list it onto platforms like Airbnb, Vrbo, Bookings.com. And I also list and like book out to traveling nurses, insurance companies, or even people who are traveling for work. So I actually got my first property not too far from here, actually, in Escondido. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I thought I knew everything that there was to know. I thought I had graduated YouTube University and I had everything that
Figured
I
it out,
needed.
yeah.
That was not the case.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why like when anyone asks like what tip I have, it's like the whole like find a mentor thing.
Find a mentor.
Because the first month I had got it all furnished. Luckily, being active duty Navy Fed gave me a $30,000 limit on a credit card at 19. I don't
Nice.
know why they thought that was a good idea, but cool.
Like straight to the club. Let's go.
Yeah. But I got the property furnished, got everything good to go. So I thought, listed it on Airbnb, and barely broke even that month. Meaning like the second and third month were gonna put me under
Okay.
if I didn't change something like now or yesterday.
That's got to be like kind of intimidating, like that realization of like, oh, like I have like weeks or months to figure this out.
Yeah, no, it was really like a day.
It was like a day.
Yeah, because I was like that month was like about to end, and like I didn't anticipate getting any more bookings, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna bring enough in. So I went to a couple of real estate like mastermind events, found as much as I could on the internet about it, and there just wasn't everything that I needed. And at the time, I was super hard headed. Didn't think like I needed a mentor, and I definitely didn't think it made any sense to like pay someone to like teach me something
Sure.
when I could just like go learn it myself. So I
Yeah.
thought, but that was not the case. And
Okay.
inevitably, I did end up paying for a mentor.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like I wish I'd have done it a lot sooner, but actually broke far more than even the second and third month. Doing 10K the second month, and then almost $12,000 my third month.
All right.
Sadly, the property owner of that property wanted to turn the garage into a bedroom, and he was like, "You can stay renting it out while we're doing construction." And I was like, "What?" I
No,
was like, "No."
it's not happening.
So I got the security deposit back, took the furniture, and then got my
Got
second
it.
property in Phoenix, and that's where I ended up like scaling.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, I do want to ask you about like the mentor and like the role that he or she, was it a he or the role that he played in your life. But I just going backwards to the very beginning of your story where we started out, you're living in the truck, you're 19, right? And you're thinking to yourself like, oh, I want this career in real estate, but it just seems too overwhelming, too intimidating. Like was there something that sort of gave you hope where you were like, oh man, like actually I could do this? Like what kept you from just like giving up and sort of resigning yourself to the fate of like, I feel like a lot of people are just sort of clocked out of life, right? Like we sort of work these 9-to-5 jobs. Like we just kind of accept, this is our reality. There's nothing else to life.
People are asleep.
Yeah, a lot of people are asleep. And that's not to say that like you or I or anybody else in this room is better than anyone, but it's just like some people just don't actualize those goals. They don't actualize those dreams. So like, what was it for you where you're like, despite my circumstances, despite how shitty life is right now, like I have hope. Like I can be bigger than this. Like what was it that gave you that hope?
Just knowing that it was a possibility.
Yeah.
Just literally looking on Airbnb and seeing properties that are doing $4 or $5, even like $1,000 a night, and then would go and look up that property on Zillow, find it, or find a property next to it and see what the rent was going for, and like realizing like how much they were profiting.
Yeah.
And like knowing it was possible if done correctly.
So you're like, why not me? Like if other people are doing it, like you see it being done, it's like, why not me? And I wish more people had that mindset,
Yeah.
like of like it is being done. Like the thing, like we always think like, oh, like in like even for me, like in journalism, it's like, oh, I can't do this, I can't break that story, I can't work for that news corporation. Like, but it's like other people are doing it, so someone's done it, so it's not like impossible. So then it's like, why not you?
Yeah, I think something that kind of made me make that realization like even further, like not so much in the beginning, but getting like further into entrepreneurship, I started going on like masterminds and stuff, where we'd take like private jets and go like hang out on like yachts and like do these like crazy stuff, and I'd go on crazy trips like this. I did one last year in May. That was pretty dope. But going there and like seeing people that are doing like multiple 6 figures a month, and like they were like sometimes below average, like as far as like thinkers, like they're not even like that smart of a person, but
you're not talking Albert Einstein's of the world.
Yeah, and they're crushing it in numbers, and I'm like, me personally, I like looked at them and I'm like, oh, I think I'm like some of these guys, I think I'm a little bit smarter than them. Like I could definitely do that.
Personally, like, and I'm not asking you to like necessarily rate yourself, but like in terms of intelligence wise, like do you feel like you were somebody who like had to work extra hard for everything, or do you feel like with real estate, with career, like even like, you know, back when you were in school and stuff, like do you feel like things just sort of came to you more naturally, or do you feel like you were somebody who had to like sort of work extra hard to keep the edge?
Enjoying this episode? Subscribe for more content on finding your own path to success. Every subscriber makes a huge difference to the pod, and we're grateful for everyone. And don't forget to throw us a classy like and comment too to let YouTube know that you're a fan of our stuff. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcasting.
So depending on what it is, when it came to like school, like high school and stuff, luckily I don't know how I ended up this way, but I never studied or paid attention in class, but I always managed to
Just kind of a whiz.
keep like A's and B's and
Yeah.
kind of like pass all my tests somehow, some way.
Okay.
My sister always hated me for that because she would study and stuff and then fail a class, and she's like, "Can you help me with this class?" And I'm like, "I don't really know too much about it."
Yeah.
She's like, "Obviously you do if you have a good grade in it." And I was
See,
like,
I had to study. I was the kid. I was the nerd who would like do stuff like 3 weeks in advance. Like I would like start I never like pulled the. I pulled 3 all-nighters through all of college, but like for the most part, I would like start my papers like 2 weeks in advance. I had this methodical schedule because I just wasn't smart enough to like bust it out the night before. You know?
No, I wouldn't even do that. I'd get to school and like I'd show up to class like 10, 15 minutes early, do the homework then.
Yeah, just like the morning of.
Yeah.
I'm with you, man. I don't know what Steve's talking about. I don't know what that feels like. Oh, I'm gonna have it done 3 weeks ahead of time. If it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would get done, right?
It's because I'm a fucking nerd, but that's all good. So I wanted to also ask you, like, for people, because we were talking before, Seth, about your background, but for people who don't know, like, since we kind of skipped over with the intro story, like, where are you originally from, and like, what brought you to San Diego? Like, can you like walk us through the journey that you were telling us before, Seth?
Yeah, so originally I'm from South Texas. If you know anything about South Texas, some Corpus Christi, Padre Island area, which is on the Gulf Coast. Grew up fishing, hunting, and all the men in my family had worked in like oil refineries and stuff like that. And I definitely did not want to do that. And I had gotten into, I guess you can consider it entrepreneurship. I mean, it is. But in high school, when like fidget spinners first came out, are you familiar with like Alibaba or like DHgate?
Alibaba, a little bit.
Yeah, so before fidget spinners had like even become a thing, I saw it on Instagram. And I went on to Alibaba and found them for 87 cents a piece. And then I sold them at my high school for $8 a piece. That's when I kind of got my first little like taste of like the grind, the hustle.
Yeah.
And then
That felt good.
After that, yeah, definitely. After that, I got into doing like landscaping, just like mowing yards.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what fueled like the whole
typical high school job. Kind of.
Yeah. I think what fueled like the whole entrepreneurship thing was when I was 17, I believe, my dad was trying to get me this Ram 1500 truck. And he was like, "We're gonna buy it for you. It's only $3,000." And I was like, "I do not want that piece of junk." He's like, "Beggars can't be choosers." So I was like, "No, I'm not begging."
I'm not gonna be a beggar. Yeah.
I was like, "I'm gonna just buy my own truck." And like at the time, like a brand new truck was like $20,000 in like 2016, 2017. And he's like, "You're not buying a $20,000 truck for your first truck." And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Yes, I am."
Yeah, like, this is me.
And that's kind of like
why not me again?
That's kind of what fueled it all. And then I got that truck, and then I started doing landscaping while
like,
working.
Check the shit out, Dad. Like I did what you said I couldn't do. Yeah.
While working at Discount Tire, and
you had worked multiple jobs at that point, right?
Yeah. I was working. I'd go to. I was in like the working program that my school had, so I could get out of school at like 10 or 11. Which allowed me to go to work earlier and work more. And then when I got off work, I would go mow like 2 to 4 yards. And how I had it set up, I could mow a yard in like 30 minutes. And I could do 2 yards an hour, obviously. So I was making $80 an hour at 17. So
not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
Is that a Texas thing where they let you just throw you out of school at 10 o'clock in the morning and to go work?
Maybe so, but it's called the working program. You can sign up for it, and then you don't have to have like they only make you take like the necessary classes.
So one thing I want to ask you is like to date, like now that you've started BNB Syndicate, you know, you've had your own time in real estate, like what are some of the big accomplishments, like some of the highlights from your career so far? Like tell us.
Last year we did over 1.4 mil last year, which is pretty dope. But the reason like I started like the whole coaching thing is because like when you're like making money like that, especially at like such a young age, you get kind of like bored, and it's kind of like
You're my age, right? You're 25.
23.
23.
Yeah.
23. 23, and you made how much last year?
Over 1.4 last year. Yeah.
Nice.
And
that's gotta like that's gonna scale like really soon.
Yeah,
Like what
yeah.
you're doing.
I'll continue scaling, and I want to get into like Section 8 multifamily and stuff like that as well. But I started teaching people, being in the Navy, people seeing like what I was doing, what I was driving, stuff like that. And people were like asking like, what are you doing? What are your secrets? Stuff like that. So I started teaching people, and people started getting really good results, and it was taking all my time to teach these people.
Yeah. Like I
Uh,
should start like charging them.
Yeah, and I wasn't making anything to teach
Yeah,
these
yeah,
people, and they were making a bunch of money. So I was like, I feel like I'm getting the shit into this.
Yeah.
And pretty much what I did was went out like the whole industry. I mean, I'm sure if you're familiar with rental arbitrage or Airbnb arbitrage, you've seen like, I guess you could call them like gurus on like Instagram. So pretty much what I did is I bought everybody's course, like in the whole industry,
Yeah.
before building my course, and I found the gaps in like everybody's courses, and then created my course based off like everything that I knew and everything that I knew wasn't out there, and pretty much built like a perfect step-by-step plan, A to Z, that anyone could take. And kind of how we have it set up now is like that full course. I do weekly Zoom calls with my students, and then of course tons of other like tools, documents, everything that they would need to build and scale this business.
And you still practice real estate yourself, right? Or are you focusing fully on the coaching right now? Because don't you still like run properties?
Yeah, so kind of how I have it set up, the same way I teach my students how to set it up, is having like VAs to manage everything for me. So as far as management goes, there's not anything that I
It's
do.
not like work, but like you're still benefiting from that
Oh,
side
yeah.
of the thing. You're not just like doing the coaching. Like
Yeah.
I have here that you own over 20 properties.
No, currently we have 17, but
17.
I don't own any.
Oh, you don't own any.
They're all arbitrage.
Well,
yeah.
that's what I meant. Like you have these like properties that are indirectly being run by you essentially.
Yeah.
And you profit from all those.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty spectacular because another thing I wanted to say was like also like for people who are who get into your coaching, like how do you like sort of approach that? So like somebody like comes to you and says, hey, like, you know, I want to get into like what's like the starting point for that
Yeah. So typically
for Airbnb?
I kind of want to figure out like where they're at.
Yeah.
Because if someone's coming to me and they're like, okay, so how's it going? Like, what's your credit like? Where are you working? How much you're making? Because like obviously you need like a good base if you're gonna go up from there. Now if someone's like, I don't have a job, I'm jobless, and my credit's like a 600 or like lower than that. I'm like, bro, we gotta work on that stuff
Shit
first.
out of luck.
Yeah, because obviously,
Shouldn't be thinking about this.
obviously, like I said, like I'm not coaching people for free.
No.
You definitely, I mean, you don't need to have money getting into this as long as you have good credit. Because like the biggest thing that I teach is leveraging business credit, which I wish I knew when I first started. But with business credit, you can essentially like set up a business that takes no money out of pocket that's going to be profitable. And kind of how that works is if you were to get a property, spend, I don't know, 10, 15, 20K, whatever it is, for first month's rent, security deposit, furnish it, like the whole shebang. That credit card's costing you $1,000 a month on the payment, and your property's profiting $3,000 a month. Now you got minus that 1,000, so you're still profiting $2,000 a month, while effectively not spending a dime out of your own pocket.
So that's like supposition people have like, oh, like I just don't have the capital to get started. Like a lot of times it's just not true as long as you know how to leverage your business credit.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, and even I have people that come to me all the time. They're like, oh, I have 30, 40, 50K saved up. And I'm like, why use it? Like, if you don't have to take money out of your own pocket, like, why not use business credit? 0% interest. It's not your money. You don't have to worry about it. At least depending on the card for like 12 to 18 months, it's going to be 0% interest. And most of my students make their, well, not even most, every single one of my students that have gotten their properties, they make their money back in less than 3 months. So like way before that 12 months even gets close to it.
Okay. So when somebody's like starts coaching, once they're, you know, actually have their shit together and they, you know, have a decent credit score and some kind of starting point, like how do you take somebody in that position and reposition them for success? Like how do you approach clients? How do you set them up for success? That's like, what's your unique approach to that?
Did you subscribe yet? If you like our content, it's the easiest way to support the pod. Hit the subscribe button on the bottom right and keep it classy.
Yeah, so initially I talked to them about, because I think this is something that a lot of people miss on. They'll make like a course or they'll teach people and just be like, you got to do this, this, and this. When like you might have been able to do it that way, and this is something that took me a while to figure out because some people like everyone's wired differently. Like me, I'm just where like if there's something that's got to be done, like I'm just gonna do it. Like,
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Straight up.
I'm not like I go in the gym every single day, and I definitely don't want to go every day. And it's not like a motivation or a drive thing. It just has to be done. So I do
Just
it.
sorry, quick interlude there is like, do you feel like you were always that way, or was that kind of the military that like sort of taught you like just take action? Because I know for some people like that's something you learn in the military is just like take action, don't hesitate too long.
I would definitely say because of the military, but not because of why you think.
Okay.
Not because the military taught me that way, but because it might have been different like when you were in the Navy, but the Navy now is, I think, really lazy. I mean, it's the most obese military branch, and it's kind of made it to where
Really? I didn't know that.
It was always kind of like that.
Okay.
The Navy was always full of fatties, and we had the least drive for that. I wouldn't say lazy, but there's definitely an art to looking busy but not actually doing anything.
Just
And
like all
we
of
were-
our ships start sinking under the combined weight of like all the morbidly.
Yeah, you gotta think it's a lot of like 19 and 20-year-old kids from
Yeah.
like the worst possible circumstances. It's guys from the inner city. It's guys from the deep south where there's no other jobs and stuff. And so that there's a propensity towards trying to get away with everything that you can. I mean, they're kids, right?
Yeah.
Think about the trouble you got into when you were like a fraternity brother and stuff. It's like that, but like without all the motivation and a lot crappier paycheck.
Yeah, you agree with that or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the military versus like what it is and what people think it is like a far different thing.
Yeah.
Like people think we're like super motivated and this like everybody
It's
like
these, like superhero,
everybody
like,
works
David
out.
Goggins.
It's not like TV.
Yeah.
It's not like
everybody
TV at
works
all.
out. They're
Yeah.
jacked. They're like hyped to go to work. It's like the total opposite.
That's what I used to think. And then I had friends who actually started to go into different branches of the military, Army, Marines Corps, a couple Navy people, and I was like, okay, that's not reality at all. But that did to some extent teach you, and not like again not the way people think, but that did to extent that experience taught you like to take action, to like kind of not
because I
hesitate.
didn't want to be that way.
Yeah.
So
Now you go to the gym, even if you don't want to, that sort of thing. Like,
yeah, and just do the work that I have to get done.
So how do you convey that mindset to your clients? Like,
Yeah. So when I'm working with people, I got to explain to them that like a lot of times they're working like a full-time 9 to 5 and they either want to have this as a side come, and most of the time I'm working with someone it's to replace their 9 to 5. And I'm like you're gonna have your 9 to 5, but you need to work twice as hard for your like I guess you can call it the 6 to 10 or 5 to 10, because that 9 to 5 is supplying everything you need. It has if you're in a building, like it's supplying the building for you, it's supplying the desk, it's supplying the job itself. Like all you got to do is do it. Now if you're doing a side hustle or a business, like now you're everything. You're the boss, you're the manager, you're the tech guy, you're everything. So it's twice as much work. So I kind of explain that to people because people were like, oh, they think it's just going to be easy. They think they're like, oh, I'm going to set this up. And
Really?
It's going to be like.
Real estate seems like intuitively, I mean, I don't like engage in the kind of real estate you do. I have some like residential stuff going on, but just to actually get into it to the level you do, like to where it's like an actual, like, replacing a 9 to 5 income, like that seems like challenging to me. People come in and think it's easy. Is that really like what you encounter?
Yeah, because they see like how I have mine set up, which
Okay. Like, oh, I can just do that.
I would say is like
Yeah.
the closest thing to like almost like completely passive. Like nothing's 100% passive, obviously, but like there's not very much that I have to do. I mean, less than a couple hours a week at most. Unless like the only time I have to do things is when it's like putting out fires, someone like not actual fires, but someone like breaks something like that. And they see that, they're like, oh, like I can get to that point where like, well, this has been like 4 years in the making. So
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
you're not going to do this in 3 months.
Sure. So you got to keep expectations realistic.
Yeah. But those people that like come to me and understand that, get their business to where it's like mostly passive pretty quickly. So just when they come in, just setting up like their LLC, get their funding, and then ultimately rolling into finding and getting a property, and then getting everything set up, all the automations, whether it be like pricing, messaging, all that stuff.
Sure.
And I have had a few students like within their first like 2, 3. I've even had a student get to $15,000 a month in his first 30 days. Pretty recently,
first month?
actually. Yeah, within his first month, did $15,000. I posted about it recently. Then 2 of my other
What's his name?
students.
Or can you say his name? Right?
His name's Javi. You'll see
Javi.
it.
Shout
Like,
out to Javi.
yeah, if you go on my Instagram, it's like one of my pinned like reels.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then
Let's go,
my
Javi.
other 2 students, Nick and River, they got to $20,000 a month within their first 60 days, and 4 properties,
That's killer.
which is like
Yeah.
way faster than I scaled when I first started.
That's not the level of confidence I would have going into it if I was to take classes with you. But do you ever encounter people on the other side who just like have very low level of like sort of self-belief, low level of confidence, and you kind of have to like take them to the other point, like take them from that extreme? Like how do you approach that?
Yeah, there's some people it's just hard for them to wrap their brain around that like people will pay that much like a night for a property. Like I'll send them like a screenshot. You see like one of my other students send a screenshot of like a booking they'll get on Airbnb, and it'll be like someone that paid like $1,000 a day, and like it's just hard for them to like wrap their brain around it. So they like think that I'm not gonna be able to get a property that's doing numbers like that. And I'm like we're like all goobers like in this in like our private community. I'm like
Sure.
None of us are like geniuses or anything like that. But I will say what makes like people like me and like some of my like higher producing students is that we're action takers.
Yeah. You have that like don't hesitate mindset.
Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just do it.
Because like my belief on that is like ultimately to like learn you have to fail. Like you can learn from someone, but you're not gonna wrap your brain around the whole concept until you actually do the thing and succeed at it, or you do the thing and fail at it and realize like why it failed, so you can know what to do for it to succeed. But really, the faster you can fail, the faster you can grow, the faster you can make more money. So that's kind of like my belief on that.
Sort of like being able to not like think too highly of yourself, be like, oh, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna nail it the first time, but to actually be like, okay, like I can fail and that's okay. And like it's like your ego like isn't a factor here. Like failure is okay. We failed, we move on, we keep going towards success, as opposed to like letting that sort of shatter you like after the first time that you like go for a property and you don't make a profit.
Yeah, and kind of like how I get through that is so like I said with the business credit cards, they're anywhere from 12 to 18 months, 0% interest. So if I'm spending like 15, 20K on a property, I'm just like thinking to myself like, okay, what's the monthly payment going to be? If it's like $500 a month, like if this does go south and like all of it fails, can I afford to like eat $500 a month for like a certain amount of time? And,
so you run that through your head.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can make an extra $500 if I need to.
Okay.
But the good thing about rental arbitrage is like somehow I've taught a couple hundred students at this time. And I've never had a student like lose any money or fail, which is pretty crazy because you would think like, oh no, never.
How many students have you had?
I've taught over 200 people now.
Over 200 people?
Yeah.
And how long again? You already told me a little bit.
A little over a year now. But you would think I'd have like one person at least that had like just
just like none.
But I haven't yet somehow.
200 no.
Yeah, I haven't yet.
Well, the market, I mean, it's just like stocks. It's easy to be a stock genius when the entire stock market is going up. And if the market for rentals is continuing to go up and there's still a lot of pent-up travel demand, that's all great. The real test is, when there's an economic downturn, and then what happens when people stop renting Airbnbs and you're stuck with these leases, right?
Yeah. I wanted to get into that. So, like, there are some like restrictions recently that have been coming down from like municipalities on Airbnbs from San Diego County, like here in Encinitas, there's been restrictions. There's been restrictions, I think, in Carlsbad, and further south as you get into like towards downtown San Diego and then further South County. So there's restrictions on Airbnbs and on how hosts have to maintain them, like permitting, licensing. Hosts in some cases, there's now laws going around where like hosts have to actually be physically there. So how do these restrictions impact your business? Have they already? And like, what is your like response to that? Like, how do you is that a problem for you? Or
so luckily with me personally, like my properties personally, it hasn't affected me so much.
Does it affect your clients though, or?
No, typically like how I advise like my students, like how I teach like find properties and stuff. I definitely tell people to stay out of California. No matter what kind of real estate investing you're doing, California is just not.
Are any of your students in California or no?
Yeah, I have students in California,
Okay.
but I typically tell people to like stay out of California for properties and stuff. No matter what you're doing, if you're Section 8 multifamily, like they just have California just has a lot of restrictions across the board.
Would you say like most in the country, like California out of?
Oh yeah, definitely. Anybody you talk to that's in like the real estate industry, you're like, what do you think about like scaling to like hundreds of doors in California? They're gonna be like, they're probably gonna tell you that's probably dumb, unless they've been doing it for a while and they have like a lot of properties here that they've like occurred like over time.
Sure.
But as far as like scaling quickly, I don't think California would be the spot for that.
I think Hawaii is probably the only worse state than California with restrictions.
Yeah, definitely. everything across the board, not even just real estate.
Do you have to like constantly keep track of like this new legislation, how this might affect your business, or at this point are you like kind of tuned out to it and just focused on
Yeah.
like is there like any recent legislation that's like coming down the pipeline? You're like, okay, yeah, that's probably gonna affect me.
So typically I advise my students to invest into places that are like super for like vacation rentals and stuff like that. Like Phoenix, places like South Carolina, they're like I guess you can say like governor, all those people they love that stuff. So I typically tell them to go to places like that or like Florida. Like some of my best students are ripping in Florida, like the whole coast of Florida. And Florida, as you know, like loves people that are traveling to Florida. So
They have a very different approach there.
There's no other industry in Florida. That's why all they have is tourism.
Yeah.
There's no factories in Florida. They don't make anything in Florida. So if it's not tourism, it's nothing. And
It's
so
over.
that's why they have the
like
support
with
for it.
COVID. When COVID happened, right? They were some of the first ones to lift
To open
restrictions.
back up.
'cause
Yeah, they were like,
they're like, we literally can't like do anything here.
Like
our
here, the
economy's
people were like
shut down.
marching on the mayor's house because they shut the beach down for like 2 days.
Yeah.
And Florida was like, we're not having any of that.
Yeah, it was a weird time.
yeah, but something that like comes to like regulations and permitting and stuff like that is something referred to like what we're talking about like right now, like Airbnbs and stuff is typically referred to as short-term rentals, like anywhere from 1 to 30 days. But a lot like when it comes to these like getting permits and stuff like that and regulations, a lot of them are like you can't rent out a place for less than 30 days, which comes to the realm of midterm rentals, which is anywhere from like 30 days and up, which is a way to get around a lot of these. And it's how all my properties are set up now. Like, of course, I have like multiple different Airbnb accounts. So like I have like new properties that I'll set up and put them on Airbnb and stuff. For the most part, I'd say like 95% of my business is running off midterm rentals. So it's just like private contracts with companies, relocation companies that are for like traveling healthcare, insurance companies, stuff like that.
Now, one thing that somebody was asking me when I told them, okay, that you were coming on and given your background with Airbnbs and passive income was sort of, there's this notion going around, and I'm not going to say what like my opinion on it, but there's this notion going around that Airbnbs are like, and that STRs as a whole are really pushing up like the cost of residential housing across the board, that it's pushing up rent prices, that's pushing up housing prices. There was actually a study that I was just looking at today from UCLA and USC. Why is UCLA working with USC? That's what's that happening? Sorry, it's my alma mater. But anyways, the study basically concluded that there was like a 10% increase in Airbnb listings leads to something like a 0.5% increase in rents and a 0.8% increase in housing prices, like residential housing prices. So if you multiply that out, then like the higher, as Airbnbs have scaled over time, housing prices have gone up accordingly, like little by little. So that was what the paper said. But that being said, it's one paper, and I'm sure there's like a other side to this. So do you want to like give that other side of like why people shouldn't hate Airbnbs and their owners and people who use them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to like dive in that because I wanted to create like a reel on it, like kind of like the opposite end of that.
Okay.
On like so I don't have like too much information on it as far as like numbers and stuff go. But
I'm sure you have an opinion about like when you hear people talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the same thing as like if there's a new hotel or new motel that's being built, and ultimately that's what Airbnb is competing against. And yeah, I don't really have too much to say as far as numbers. I wish I could like give you like a different number side of things.
Do you think that also people talk about with Airbnbs, like sort of encouraging this, displacement, gentrification, like segregation, that sort of thing? Like, do you think there's any truth to those arguments, or is that kind of the same like category of?
I haven't heard anything about that.
What about like community character? Like people always talk about like, oh, okay, like Airbnb's changed community character. In Encinitas, like I was a reporter here, that was like the big argument for a long time was like, with new zoning laws, with changing zoning laws that would allow for more affordable housing, people are worried about community character. But also with Airbnbs, people are worried about community character because they're like, oh, like these people come in, they don't have any investment in the community, they leave after a short-term stay. It disrupts our community. People, you know, those you know, those fucking Gen Zers have their house parties. You know, it's like what is the sort of rebuttal to that like argument about community character?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say that's like not a thing because and I know it happens all the time, but that's ultimately gonna come down to it's not even like Airbnb itself, but it's gonna come down to the host.
Yeah.
Because like first place parties like in Airbnb aren't allowed in the first place. I mean, people do them all the time, but like in the Airbnb rules, like they're not allowed. So like the biggest way to prevent that, like if there's any hosts listening, because that's ultimately what's going to keep Airbnb going for the long haul, is good host.
Yeah.
Because what I do, like not so much now, but when I was getting my first properties and stuff, and like I was actually personally going and like setting up and stuff, I would go like door to door and talk to all the neighbors like about it, so they like knew me personally. So
Explain what was happening.
yeah, so like if something did happen, they weren't just gonna call the cops.
Yeah.
Like the cops come to my Airbnb,
Sure.
they would like text me, they'd call me, so I could like fix
So
everything.
you could personally deal with it.
Yeah, so I could fix it in house because they call the cops and like I don't ever hear anything about it. Like the problem's gonna happen again because I don't know.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
I mean, it only makes sense to fix it that way. But yeah, ultimately, I think it's definitely a problem. But the only like real solution to that is just better host, and people that are looking to run this more as a business and not like a get rich quick thing.
Sure. Since Airbnb, what was it? Was it 2019, 2020? I can't remember. It was 2019, 2020, maybe 2021 when they actually officially banned like house parties. They're like, yeah, this like you cannot have like large gatherings. But after that, did it actually improve, or was that sort of like a prohibition-esque policy of just like, you know, slapping someone on the wrist but doesn't actually accomplish
so
anything?
I actually like push it in my properties, like it's in my house rules and everything, and I push it through my students too, because one, it can help you make like a lot of money. If someone's like partying or they're smoking like in the property, you can charge like I charge like $1,000 partying fee, $1,000 smoking fee. So
Oh, you can actually charge them for that.
yeah, so if like I see somebody's about to have a party, like
You're like, okay,
I'll
but
let
like
I'll let it happen for a second.
you got to pay.
I'll let it happen for a second, and then I'll call the cops, get them kicked out, and charge them $1,000.
Is that like a common tactic? I mean, that's like, I mean, that's pretty genius. But like, how?
A lot of people
Is
that I
like,
know, a
pretty
lot of
common?
people you'll talk to, they're like doing like bigger numbers in Airbnb. Like they're super strict,
right.
which is good because obviously, like if that's like our business, we want to be strict so it could be there for the long haul. Because obviously, I want to appeal more. Like yes, you want to appeal to the guest because that's who's staying at your property. But ultimately, like especially if you're doing arbitrage, you want to keep your landlord happy and appeal to them because I mean you want to keep running your business.
All right.
So,
So in other words, if I want to have a Project X style kind of party, I should not be using one of your places
No.
because I will not only lose my money, but and then get kicked out, but then I'm gonna get in trouble with the cops. Like there's like three terrible levels to it. Robert, you're about to say something?
I was just gonna ask what the so say somebody does that and they throw a party and you're like, okay, great, I'm gonna charge you another $1,000. Like, what's the enforcement on that? What if they're just like, whatever, I already had the party, I was already there. What am I gonna pay this guy for, other than just like Airbnb saying you can't rent anymore? Like, what's the enforcement mechanism for that?
yeah, so typically I'll reach out to them right away. 9 out of 10 times they're like, tell you to suck it. Like, like who wants to pay an extra $1,000?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't make them pay an extra $1,000, there's a pretty easy way around that. I'm not sure if like Airbnb themselves actually ever gets the money for it, but if something breaks, if something happens, if there's a party, if someone smokes, as long as you prevent, or as long as you like present evidence to Airbnb, like if you have ash or like I have, like noise monitors in my property, and it will tell me like if someone's too loud or whatever it is. And I also have cameras on the front of my property, so like if they book for 3 people and 15 people are there, and I submit all that
That's a
evidence to
problem.
Airbnb,
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey, I charge $1,000 partying fee. Airbnb will pay me out, and then they'll go try to get the money from the guests.
Have you done that like pretty often, or is this like a very rare like exceptional kind of case?
I think it's pretty rare just because I have it like
Yeah.
I have it like in my house rules and stuff, and
Do
it's
you have
kind of
any-
like a
Yeah.
I let people know like don't do it or it's like you're gonna lose.
Do you have any like really crazy like stories of maybe sometime you woke up and you're like, oh my god, like somebody's throwing like a fucking rager at one of my places, or like any kind of things like that where like the place was like trash? Or...
Yeah, one of my it was the second property I'd ever gotten, and we had those pool chairs that like you'll see at resorts and stuff that they line up like around the whole outside of the pool.
Yeah.
So we had those, and it looked like the guest had. He said that they were like I forgot how you say it, but like beaten from the sun, so it was like really brittle when they were brand new pool chairs.
Okay.
But pretty much what it looked like is someone like just like ran across every single chair and like put their foot through every single chair and like,
oh my god,
so ruined them. And then he sent me pictures of them and he's like, hey, these chairs were like destroyed by the sun, they were brittle, whatever. I was like, okay, whatever. And I was like, I'll just submit it to Airbnb. And he was like, okay, cool. Like he was cool about it. Like he was cool paying for it. And then I got to the property, or actually my cleaners had gotten to the property and they were sending me pictures, and like the fan in one of the bedrooms, like the fan blade was like ripped off, and the ceilings in this house were like 12, 15 foot ceilings.
How did someone get up there?
I don't even know. That's why I was like, how did he get up there? Like you'd have to stack like 3 people to like get all the way up there and like reach the fan.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a bunch of other like small things wrong with it. There was a couple steak knives were like under the couch cushion, and I was like,
it's kind of sus.
It took my cleaners a few hours actually, because they were like, there's 2 steak knives missing, and I'm like, look for them. And eventually, like almost 2 hours later, they're like, they were under the couch cushion. I was like, I don't know what these people.
What are they doing?
I don't know.
Dude, that is gnarly. Did you ever follow up on it, or you just kind of like let it slide?
No, I had all the pictures from my cleaners and stuff and submitted everything to Airbnb.
Okay.
And I just bought all new stuff that day and sent Airbnb the receipts of like the stuff I had bought, and they reimbursed me. So
okay,
that was cool.
Happy
and then
ending, I guess.
Gave the guy a bad review.
Yeah, well, justifiably so.
Hey there, classy viewers. Thanks for listening to our podcast. We're dedicated to providing you with quality content that inspires and brightens your day. But keeping it classy can be expensive. If you enjoy our content, we're asking for your support for the podcast using the donation link in the description below. Donations mean the world to us, and even as little as $5 can make a huge difference in helping us make this podcast a reality. Plus, donors are added to our shortlist to be the first to receive exclusive offers on merch, extra content, and even chances to appear on the pod. Anything you can give would truly be appreciated. Now get back to enjoying the rest of the podcast, and as always, stay classy.
Now, as we close, I just want to ask you a couple more questions about, like, so one thing is I kind of looked at your Instagram a bit, kind of stalked you a little before this interview, and
Yeah.
One thing I noticed is that, you're obviously very motivated in your career, but also, like, outside of that, I mean, it's obvious that, you like to work out a lot, you're disciplined, you're motivated. Like, tell us a little bit about that. Like, tell us about, like, some of the habits you have that allow you to be successful, because a lot of people, maybe listening to this like, like, that's great for that guy, but not everybody can do that. Like, but really, I feel like for you, again, this was a situation where you didn't start with a lot. You were living in your truck at one point. Now you're here making over $1 million a year at 23. Like, what were like some of the habits and disciplines, like the little things that added up to those big results for you?
I think just the fear of like being broke again. I really love to go out to eat. Like love eating nice food. I like driving nice cars. I just like nice things. And I hate not having those things. And I don't know if it's so much as like habits. I think it's more of a mindset or just a belief. Because I believe like going to the gym every day is important, but I don't think that like going to the gym is needed to be successful. I mean, look at like Elon Musk. Jeff Bezos is jacked now, but he didn't.
Can we take like a minute and just body shame Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, or I guess old Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, Jeff Bezos is jacked now, but like obviously like you don't need to do those things.
Yeah.
But like the gym helps me like more mentally than physically, which is pretty crazy to say.
You work out in the morning or night or?
Usually I don't really like do things like at a certain time. It's kind of like just, whenever it's the best time to do it.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, because I always have like tons of like meetings and stuff scheduled at like weird times.
Same.
So I'm just trying to fit it in where I can, because I hate working out early in the morning on an empty stomach.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. I feel
like super weak. Like
yes,
I want to get a meal.
And you're like somebody told me this. I never realized it before, but like you're dehydrated, like because you've been sleeping the whole night, so you haven't been drinking water. So when you wake up in the morning, that's another reason why it sucks, is because your body is like actually dehydrated from like a whole night of just not consuming any fluids.
Yeah, and then what do we drink in the morning? Coffee. What dehydrates us? Caffeine.
Yeah,
right here. All right.
Yeah, and like to make it worse too, I have like a super fast metabolism, and like my goal is to like bulk. Like I eat as much as I can, and I lift heavy. And working out early like that does the opposite. Like you don't have anything in you, so your workout's just burning fat,
like cutting you up.
Yeah, and I don't need that. I'm trying not to be a skinny kid anymore.
You said something interesting on your Instagram the other day when I was doing my little stalking research. Like you were on a run, and I think you were self-recording or something, and you said something along the lines of, you're talking about like what makes somebody like a loser. You were saying like people or lame or uncool or whatever. You were like saying like what about me like makes me like uncool. It's like I don't drink, I don't party, I don't do drugs, I don't do this, I don't do that. And you're on this run and you're sweating bullets. But then you said something that stuck with me, and it was like, to be uncool in the eyes of someone whose life I would never want to emulate is something that I'll take every day. It was something along those lines.
Yeah,
right?
I said
do you remember what the line was?
I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't party. Am I lame for that? Absolutely. And to be lame in the eyes of someone that I would never want to be like is a win. Like,
yeah. Explain that a little more. Like, what does that like come from?
I got that from I forgot his name. He does like runs every single morning, and he does.
It's not Goggins, is it?
No. But he does runs every morning, and he like
Cameron Haynes.
I'm not sure what his name is. I could find out on my Instagram, but I don't remember what his name is.
Yeah.
But he does those runs every morning, and I was like thinking about it, and I always try to like challenge myself and do things that are hard, things that I don't want to do, like waking up at 4 a.m. and running with my shirt off.
Yeah.
Like that was not
Shit
fun
sucks.
at all. And I forgot what it is. The part what kind of had got me into that. I forgot what it is. The part of your brain that grows like when you do things that you don't want to do. And the more comfortable you are, that part of your brain is smaller. And they did a study that like the people that have that part of their brain that's really small is like in obese people, and people that are like, I don't want to say like poor, but like particularly like lower classes.
Disadvantaged.
Yeah, and they noticed that like people that were like in those classes that had like that part of their brain was really small.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thought it was like really interesting.
There's actual science to that, of doing things that make you uncomfortable actually enlarges that part of your brain.
Yeah, and they saw that people that were athletes, people that had like CEOs of businesses and stuff, like when they died and they would like look at their brain, like that part of their brain was like enormous, like it was huge. And I was like, like it just made a lot of sense to me. And I was watching it like while I was at the gym, and I was thinking about it all day. So I woke up like super early and just like ran around the block a couple times.
Yeah. And you're just like, let's do this. Like, let's start the day.
I was just felt super motivated that day.
Yeah, hell yeah. Do you have any like inspirations people might like recognize? Like, doesn't have to be David Goggins, but like, is there anybody out there where you're like, that you like follow yourself, or that you kind of monitor, or whose work you read that kind of inspires you, gets you up, motivates you?
Yeah. So he's a YouTuber. I listen to him a lot. His name's Dan Coe. He talks a lot about like just leverage, like doing as little work as you can to make as much money as possible. And yeah, I listen to his like almost every day, like in the shower. I get out of the gym, hop in the shower, and I put that on and just listen. What
about other habits, other disciplines? Like how are the little things that you do like adding up to success every day?
So I would say just like eating clean. Like I avoid sugar like as much as possible. Like I know it looks weird, like with this sitting right here. It's like I don't know. You won't never see me like drinking a Red Bull or anything. It's just today, I swear.
Yeah. I believe you.
But normally, like I avoid like eating unhealthy, and I've like it's a huge change. Like when you eat super clean, I just feel like I don't know how to explain it, but then like well lubricated. Like I'm always like I feel like I'm just going. And when I eat like a bunch of carbs or eat like chips or anything like that, I feel like ass. And like I've gotten to the point where I haven't had soda in so long or fast food. That we went to Phoenix a few months ago. We had gotten Whataburger because they don't have it here. I hadn't had it in probably years. And I ate Whataburger, and I thought I had the flu. Like I felt like I had the flu. Like I felt terrible. I guess just
when you're not used to it.
I guess it's just a tip to people. Like it's hard to have like motivation or even like that right mindset if you're like feeding
like shit.
If you're feeding your body, I mean, it doesn't make sense to like if your body was like a F1 car, to put like the lowest quality fuel in it. Like it only makes sense to put like the highest quality like race fuel in the car.
What would you say though to people who are listening? It's like, okay, yeah, that's cool and all, Steven, but I just don't have time to like meal prep to cook healthy meals. Like, what do you say to people who just say like, yeah, I don't have time to handle
That's
that?
like so easy. Like I eat the most boring meals, like literally grass-fed ground beef, grass-fed bison, and I just like throw it in the pan like that. Put the rice in the rice cooker.
Yeah.
Put the lid on the beef. Like
So it doesn't have to be a high effort thing.
No, and I, like when it gets out, like throw some low calorie sauce on stuff and just like smash it down.
Sure. Now, one other question I have for you. You know, you're 23. You're living in San Diego. You're absolutely killing it in your field. But the other interesting thing about you is at the same time, you know, you have this very disciplined lifestyle. You know, you talk about, you know, you don't really drink, you don't really party, like you, but you're in San Diego. You know, was America's finest city, right? And that's what they call it. And there's tons of opportunity here for young people. There's tons of fun things to do. Like, how do you like sort of stay disciplined? You know, like, all right, you know, it's a weekend. I'm not going to go to the club. I'm going to stay and I'm going to work or do something constructive. Like, what is the mindset that goes into that of staying like disciplined and avoiding those, you know, I guess vices?
Yeah, I guess the way like I'm not like perfect by any means. I don't ever
sure,
like there's
but relative
I don't just
to
never like I say
relative to the average 23-year-old though, I think you're doing pretty good.
Like I don't drink. Like when I say I don't drink, it's like I don't drink. But like every once in a while, like I'll have a drink or two. I don't ever get like blasted. Like I don't ever do that. Like but I guess the way like I get through that is like having what I like to call like a season of no. So like if someone wants to do something, like I was just like, hey, I'm in a season of no. They're like, what's that mean? I'm like, it means I'm not doing anything. Like I'm
like silent.
I'm not drinking. I'm not going. And then I'll have times where like if I just like grind for like 3 months and I'm like doing a bunch of content, I'm working with my students a lot. I'm just on top of it for like 3 months. I'll take like a week or so and just like go on vacation or like I'll chill, I'll hang out. And I guess just having a way to keep your consistency, where because obviously no one can just be on unless you're like Elon Musk, where you can work, sleep for 3 hours under your desk, wake up and go back to work. Most people aren't a machine. So
well, everyone knows he's an alien anyways.
Yeah, literally. But yeah, just find a way to keep yourself from burning out. Work as hard as you can for as long as you can, but not to the point to where like you can't be consistent, because there's people that they'll get this like random spurt of like motivation and they'll work for like 16 hours in a day, and then they won't work for like a week or two on whatever thing they're
working.
You don't want that. I'm like that's the opposite of what you want. Like if you can consistently only work 2 hours a day on like whatever you're working at, whether it's like
your workflow shouldn't look like the S&P 500. Like it should look more like not even a bell curve. It's just like a flat.
Yeah, just flat as you can possibly make it. Like if 4 hours a day is too much, you notice like you work 4 hours a day and the next day you just cannot get yourself to do it, then like
you know yourself.
Find like the hours that like you can consistently put in every day and do. I mean, just
where you can like replicate the process.
Yeah, start with 1 hour. Like if you're writing a book, if you're editing content, if you're getting into Amazon, if you're getting into Airbnb, like just put in what you can.
Yeah.
And that ultimately comes down to the person, because like the way that I am, like I look at it to where it's kind of hard to have like a work-life balance, especially when you're first starting a business. And like my belief on it is like you should just go like hard, and just like do it as much as possible for
the beginning.
As you can.
You gotta go hard.
But there's a lot of people that can't do it that way. So there's like both sides of the coin.
I think that's when you first describe that, where you like work real hard for a day and you have all this focus and then you can't get back to it for like a week because your brain just doesn't work. I think you just described ADHD. And I think that a lot of people are struggling with that, and myself included. And it's difficult. It's really, really tough to make yourself do stuff. And I had a similar experience in school to you, where it was like I didn't really do a lot of work, but I still managed to like get really decent grades. But I came to find out much later in life that you have ADHD, and that's why you are like that.
Yeah.
I don't. Let's do it. I haven't gone to the doctor or anything or taken any medication for it, because that shit kind of fries your brain. But my whole family has it. Like my dad, my sister, they actually take medication for it, which is cool. But like that stuff's so bad for your body. And I'm like if I'm aware that like it's messing me up, then like I can obviously like counter it if I'm aware of it. Like the only thing that you can't affect is if you're just totally clueless that it's a thing.
Sure. Now, I did want to ask you like one last question, which is like we talk about the work-life balance. We talk about like, avoiding burnout, but also working hard, staying disciplined. That's a tough line to to toe. So
Yeah.
like, what do you have like mechanisms in place where you're like, okay, like this is how I'm gonna avoid burnout. This is how I avoid overwork. Because I think some people just work themselves into the ground, like especially in I think American culture, I think it's safe to say like there's a culture of like where it's people pride themselves on being busy, on working harder than everybody else. Like it's not like that everywhere else. Like, but for you, like, what is your personal like secret to, okay, like I work hard, like I'm staying ahead of the competition, but that doesn't mean that I'm burned out. That doesn't mean that I'm like dissatisfied and frustrated with myself.
Yeah, kind of a way like how I like to work. Mine's like, I mean, honestly, as much hours that I can put in a day on whatever it is that I'm doing. Currently, right now, I'm writing my book, and I record.
Writing a book?
Yeah, on
All right, we'll talk about that in a second. But go on. Yeah.
And then do my content every day as well. Kind of like how I like to do it. Just go as long as I can. Which is usually like an hour, and I'll start feeling like a little bit unproductive, where I feel myself like looking around like my computer screen, like trying to find something to distract me, and then I'm like, okay, I'm like gonna be unproductive for the next couple minutes. So I have like a couch in my office. I like lay on the couch for a minute, like 10, 15 minutes, just like do mindless thing on my phone, like scroll on social media.
So that isn't brain power.
Yeah, and then like 10, 15 minutes is up. I hop back up and I get back to it, and I'm like, okay. And it just
little breaks.
I keep like
Okay, that's how you.
I like motivated to like hop on my phone, and then while I'm on my phone, I'm like motivated to get back into the work. So it's like.
So last thing I want to ask you is like this book. Tell us about it. Like, when is it coming out? What's it about?
Yeah, so it's gonna be about rental arbitrage. It's gonna be called the 7-Figure Renter Roadmap.
7-Figure Renter Roadmap.
Yeah, because Airbnb arbitrage is all about like renting properties.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a pretty cool title. But it's gonna be pretty much about like my story, how I got into it, and as well as like ins and outs of the business, and then going through like a couple case studies of like my students and stuff like that.
Dang. So you're writing a book, you're coaching, and then you still have these other properties that, I mean, I know it's like passive, but still, like, how do you have time for anything, man? Like, you don't have a girlfriend, wife, anything?
Yeah,
or?
I'm married.
You're
I've been married for 3
congratulations.
years.
Okay, I was gonna say like that's doesn't leave a lot of time for the wife or potential kids. That's
and I'm still active duty military right now.
And you're still active duty military. Dude,
yeah,
that's hype.
I was supposed to get out last year, but I broke my ankle, so right now I'm like waiting on medical process.
So you're active duty. So are you on like a 4-year contract, or like how does it work?
Yeah, my 4-year contract's over.
Oh, yeah, it's over. So you extended.
No. So I broke my ankle, so I'm on like medical hold. So like
medical. And how long have you been on medical hold for?
Probably about 6 months now.
6 months. Okay.
I should be getting out at the end of this year. Once all like my medical paperwork gets processed and stuff, which is cool. I'll get my disability and stuff.
All right, there you go.
That is the worst, man. I mean, the Navy's always been like that, and it's even if they're throwing you out. Like, I mean, I had some friends that like I don't know, pop for weed or something. And they're like, okay, we're gonna throw you out of the Navy, and it took like a year. It's like, what are you doing for a year, right?
That's government for you, right?
Yeah, and it was crazy because I broke my ankle in 21.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
And now
no, I broke it at actually beginning of 22.
Oh man, of 2022.
Yeah.
Oh man, and now you're getting now this is happening.
Yeah, finally. Because for the longest, because I broke it on deployment, and like on deployment, they're like,
where are you deployed?
In the Middle East, but they don't want you going anywhere if you're on deployment. Like you're a body for work.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't give me X-rays or anything, and then eventually we got back from deployment, and them gaslighting me, telling me that like it was just a sprain, it's just a sprain, it's just a sprain. I'm like, look at it, that is not a sprain. Finally got an X-ray, and they're like, oh, you're good, the bone healed. And I'm like, well, it still hurts. They're like, no, you're good, the bone's healed.
You're like,
and I'm like,
no, doesn't seem healed.
There's things like around a bone, like
Navy Medical is a hobby shop. Yeah. It's a bunch of like 24-year-old newly minted doctors that are doing their couple of years in the service so they can get their their medical degree paid off. And so there's a lot of trial and error. Let's just stick with that.
Eventually, I got connected with a civilian doctor, got it approved through like military insurance. He did an MRI, and he's like, your ankle's fucked.
You're like, yeah.
2 torn tendons, 2 torn ligaments. And actually next month I'll be going into my consultation for surgery on like my tendons and my ligaments finally. Like,
okay. Well, best of luck with that. We wish all the best to you. Now, before we let you go, people who are like listening to this, like, hey, I wanna know more about this guy. I wanna maybe get involved with BNB Syndicate. Like, how can people reach you? How can people get connected to your coaching services?
Yeah, so initially I like to people reach out to me, like preferably in Instagram DMs,
What's
just
your handle?
because. So my handle is my name's Steven Billman, but my handle is Steven Bill Moss. So Steven with a V and then Bill Moss, BILLMAS. So just like that, and you can shoot me a DM. I prefer Instagram because you can see like all my highlights, all my
Sure.
students talking. I usually like at my students, so like
Yeah.
if you're like this guy's full of shit,
You
you can just
like, here's the story.
you can just go message my student and be like,
Yeah, ask him.
hey, what do you think about Steven? And I promise you, every single one of my students will vouch for me. So.
Yeah, you're 200 no. Let's go right here. And then you have a website too, right? What's the site?
Yeah, so it's www.bnbsyndicate.org.
All right, awesome. Well, Steven, it's been a pleasure having you on. Best of luck to you and your ankle. I hope you feel better. But glad you're able to hopefully get out this year and then just focus even more on your business, focus on your future. And yeah, guys, check his stuff out. Check him out on Instagram. Check out the website. And it's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it.
All right, that's a wrap, guys. This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy Podcast with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, you can find all of our content at our website at stayclassypod.com. And thanks to our production sponsor and partner, MaxLux Media. You can find them at maxluxmedia.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Every subscription helps and goes a long way towards ensuring that we can continue to produce content for viewers like yourself. Thanks so much. Stay classy.